21st full board authority meeting at the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. I would like to ask our executive director to please do the roll call.
I like that, executive director.
Yeah, I've promoted you. I'm sorry.
It's changed a few times at president's clerk, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, roll call, folks. Member Beattie.
I'm here.
Member Brady.
I'm here.
Member Clark.
I'm here.
Member Kuhn-Peterson.
I'm here.
Member Cridland.
Here.
Member Fior.
Good morning.
Member Foster.
Good morning.
I'm told that Member Houston sends regrets. Member Ingrao.
Here.
Member Kawal.
Here.
Member McKenzie.
Here.
Member Metcalf. Member Metcalf.
He's here. He's here. He's just muted.
Okay, Member Rapley.
Here.
I understand Member Shurton is not able to attend. And Member Smith.
Yes.
Member Steele. Member Woodhouse, I understand, is having some problems logging in. Are you there, Member Woodhouse?
I just got in now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And Member Wright.
I'm here.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Can you please now all mute? Oh, sorry.
I believe I was missed.
Oh my gosh, you were.
Member Halenga, I'm so sorry.
Best for last.
I'm here.
Did we miss anyone else, just to be sure? Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Can you please mute yourselves? It helps with us with the, and I just see Member Steele popping in. So he is here. Now, if everybody, again, can you please mute yourself? It really helps with the feedback. So I'd like to call the meeting to order. The Niagara Peninsula Watershed is located on the traditional territory of Indigenous peoples dating back countless generations. We want to show our respect for their contributions and recognize the role of treaty making in what is now Ontario. And just to let you know, just for housekeeping, I will be asking who is opposed. If I see that there are a number of people that are opposed, we will do a standing roll call on that vote. I think at this time I'd like to send our condolences to Member Houston, who recently lost her father. So our sympathies are with her today. Okay, folks, I'm going to ask I'm not going to promote you anymore, Grant, so I'm going to ask you if there's any changes to the agenda, please.
We do. We have a last minute motion added to correspond with correspondence item 4A. And then also Scott Blugers from KPMG has been asked to present immediately after adoption of the minutes because he has another commitment.
Okay, thank you very much. So it is moved by Member Beattie, seconded by Member Brady. Can everybody please mute again? There's that feedback. Thank you. Moved by Member Beattie, seconded by Member Brady, that we move the agenda as amended. Any opposed? Seeing none. Thank you. So we are going to go with any declarations or conflict of interest. If you're phoning in, just shout it out. Seeing none, thank you. So we're going to move the approval of the minutes. We're going to do them at the same time, folks. This is the full board authority meeting. This was dated April 18th or 16th. That was last month's meeting, as well as the full authority closed session meetings of that same date. It is moved by Member Clark, seconded by Member Kuhn-Peterson, that those minutes be adopted as accordingly. Any opposed? Any questions? Thank you. So now we're going to move right on to our presentation. As our clerk said, that it was going to be moved up ahead for timing purposes. So we have a presentation by Scott Pluggers from KPMG. This is regarding our financial statements and audit findings related to the agenda item 9.1.3, report number FA3121, This is the 2020 audited financial statements and audit findings report. After we are finished, we are going to move that item up for approval just because we're on the same topic. So Scott, thank you very much for attending this morning, and the floor is yours. Everyone
No
else,
problem.
please mute.
Well, thanks for having me, and then for accommodating the last minute change. Trying to cram in a lot of meetings on a late Friday morning before a long weekend. So certainly appreciate the moving around of your agenda. So do I have control to share? I think that was the commentary, right? Okay. So what we'll do is let's just make sure I can pull up the right information here and still see everyone. Okay. Just maybe a couple thumbs up if you can see our audit findings reports. Or just awesome. Thanks, everyone. So once again, thanks for having me this morning. I'll take you through a bit of a brief overview of the findings report, as well as the financial statements and a few quick key highlights, knowing that we did have a chance to meet a few weeks back with the Finance Committee in detail and discuss these matters as well. So we'll just kind of provide you the high-level points, and then if there's anything I've missed or if anything that you'd like to chat about, by all means, happy to take questions at that time. Okay. Find my mouse. So just on our executive summary here. So, certainly with respect to finalizing the audit, we are completed our audit for the 2020 year end. Certainly the financial statements stay draft. Really, the final remaining procedure is this meeting this morning. So having discussions with yourselves as members of the board, and then ultimate approval of the financial statements. And so once that happens, we are prepared to issue an unqualified audit opinion, or in other words, a clean audit opinion. So a lot of these housekeeping matters here have, been resolved over the past 3 weeks or so, and certainly will provide management with the representation letter to sign and again issue an unqualified or a clean audit opinion. With respect to the financial impact of COVID-19, certainly no organization is immune from that, as you're well aware in dealing with that in your meetings. Certainly, whether public sector, private, you name it, it's kind of faced different challenges throughout. And so certainly that plays into the audit, both from a consistency and year-over-year comparability standpoint, as well as understanding, any significant operational impacts on COVID and what that might mean for the audit, as well as financial reporting implications. So not completely, relevant for the authority, given, the small cohesive team and the nature of your financial reporting, but certainly had to incorporate some elements of review as it relates to COVID-19 and impacts on things like internal controls directly related to financial reporting. So, no concerns overall as a result of, say, COVID-19 on the financial statements. We did have discussions with management around the impact of CEWS claims and what that means for the financial statements. So certainly that was addressed during the course of our audit as well. Okay. We have a number of significant findings and risks, significant areas of audit focus that we bring to your attention, most which would be consistent with prior year in terms of some of the areas where we spend time, and I'll touch on those in a few moments here. And then just two other points here, significant accounting policies in the financial statements of the authority have all been applied appropriately and consistently year over year from the 2019 year end, and there's been no new changes in your accounting policies for the 2020 year end. And then lastly, with respect to independence, it is important that we communicate to you as those charged with governance that we have maintained our independence with respect to the services that we do provide the authority throughout the duration of our engagement. Okay. Now, the next several pages, again, as mentioned, walk through our risks and key findings from the audit. Overall, these pages are consistent with prior year and no significant concerns, as I mentioned, or significant audit findings as it relates to some of the key areas of audit focus. So hoping that you've all had a chance to read that, but maybe I'll save you the time this morning of reading it in detail. Areas of grant revenue, deferred contributions, of course, the authority generated revenue, which was one of the most significantly impacted areas in the audit as it relates to COVID-19. Of course, accounts payable, accrued liabilities, looking at any potential accruals that need to be captured in the year end, whether there was severance accruals, some of the legacy items that continue to draw down over the course of time as those items are settled in cash. And certainly that's an area of focus for us in terms of completeness of expenses and accruals in your financial statements. And then operating expenses and payroll expenses as well. Okay. Lastly, just on tangible capital assets, an area of focus given the resources that the authority has under its control, as well as looking at any donations which could happen from time to time. It does have a unique accounting treatment that needs to be considered. So there was one asset assumed in the year for a nominal value, and we worked with management just to ensure that that value was appropriately reflected in the financial statements. On materiality, so it is important to communicate materiality to you, so you can see the metrics we've used, very consistent with prior year, which is appropriate and consistent with a number of the authorities that we do. The benchmark that we use to consider materiality is total revenues, which again, consistent with prior year, which is an important point to highlight, so you're not seeing changes or big swings in your materiality determinations by your auditors each year. So materiality for the financial statements as a whole has been set at $270,000 for the 2020 year end. So with respect to adjustments and differences, just a few differences to highlight to you. There's really no significant internal control deficiencies that are driving these adjusting journal entries. So not giving us any concerns in terms of the audit overall. And there's no adjustments that remain uncorrected in the financial statements, which again, just an important point to note there. We've summarized, and it's a bit of a requirement in all of our findings reports, again, as if we're not inundated enough with COVID-19 impacts, certainly just how that's played into our audit. So important that you understand is, again, those charged with governance, where that's come into play, the things that we've considered in terms of risk assessment, materiality, and again, working remotely. So I will just extend my thanks to Lise and the team for, helping us work in a remote setting. It really is a team environment at this point. We don't have the luxury of being right beside your finance team to go and ask them questions as we need to. So working remotely certainly presents some challenges, both from a just practicality standpoint, sharing of information, and so forth. So again, just thank you to the management team for helping us work through the audit this year. Okay. And then maybe just two final comments on the findings report. Again, some information on our substantive response and testing over the Sue's claim, and understanding, all things considered and all available information, both as at December 31st, 2020, and subsequent information as you continue down that path of reviewing it and dealing with the matter at hand as it relates to Sue. So happy to take any questions if there are any on that. And then lastly, each year, especially for those charged with governance, it's important to understand some of the current developments and updates that are coming before the authority. So following public sector accounting standards, there's a number of standards that are coming out in subsequent years. Thankfully, the standard setters have agreed to defer all implementation of new accounting standards by 1 year. So that's an important point to note. There are some, we'll call them notable impacts, mainly on your management team, and specifically around asset retirement obligations, which is a new standard coming out, not for today's meeting, but certainly as we get closer to that transition date, that will become more of a hot topic, if you will, as it will place, some pressures on your team as a whole. So not just your finance team, but operations within the Watershed team, bringing everybody to the table to understand where you might have any potential exposure should you have to retire an asset or do something in the future. But again, just important for your knowledge to see what's coming and the changes that are coming and some of the impacts that it'll have on management. The rest of our report, standard appendices, things that hopefully you would have seen in the past. Some of it's required communications as well, but nothing specific to the authorities. Hopefully that was helpful. I'm happy to take any questions on the findings report if there are, or we can move to the statements.
Thank you, Scott. If you don't mind, could you unshare just for a minute so I can see the board? This is one of the challenges of having Cyberville. So before we go to questions, I just wanted to ask our Chair of Finance, Member Kwall. Oh, there you are, Chair Kwall. Is there anything you would like to add or anything you would like to add for context?
No, thank you very much, Chair Johnson. The Finance Committee did look at both the audit findings report and the financial statements. We asked a number of questions. Mr. Plugers has addressed some of those in his response, and so I really have nothing to add from the Finance Committee at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, and my apologies, Scott, for mispronouncing your last name. I apologize. No. Are there any questions for Scott before we move on to approving? You did such a great job, Scott. And I think going in front of our Finance Committee was very helpful as well. That got everybody prepared.
Chair Johnson?
Yes.
Chair Johnson, this is Chandra.
Oh, sorry,
Scott
I
said-
see.
Yeah, Scott also, he's not done with his presentation. There's another part to his presentation.
Correct. Okay, thank you. So Scott, you can continue. Thank you, everyone.
Sure. I'll just put this back up on the screen here. Did I get it? No. Sorry. There we go. And just trusting that everyone can see the financial statements. Awesome. Thank you. Okay. So as I mentioned, just the timing of where we're at today, of course, the statements say draft and subsequent to the board's approval, that draft will come off. And again, as I mentioned previously, just an unqualified audit opinion, or in other words, a clean audit opinion. I always joke that I'll save the lengthy reading of the audit report just because it seems to get longer almost each year. So you're welcome to certainly read it, but I mentioned the most important point, which is unqualified opinion. So just on the statement of financial position, again, this is as at December 31st, 2020. And an important point I like to make as well is when you're reading these financial statements is to consider any notes to the financial statements as well, to read the statements in its entirety, just if there's any note references. So just it'll provide a bit more information for what's on the face of the statements as you go through. But for the year ended December 31, 2020, your total financial assets are 9.2 million, up from 8.5 million in the prior year. Largely driven by a bit of an increase in cash that you can see there, which we'll highlight on the cash flow statement for you, and as well as some changes in investments, minor changes, and just timing differences or timing changes of what's outstanding with respect to accounts receivable as at the end of the year. That's followed by your total liabilities of 3.6 million, just up from 3.1 million in the prior year. Again, not a huge significant change, but you will notice your SUS revenues or SUS receipts of funds are recognized within the liabilities component as at December 31st, 2020. So for a total net financial asset position, very comparable year over year of 5.5 million compared with 5.3 million in the prior year. Certainly a good indicator, within public sector accounting standards as it relates to that metric, seeing a net financial asset or a positive position there. And then that's followed by your non-financial assets, which hopefully, can make sense to many of you in terms of the most significant balance being your tangible capital assets or your infrastructure and your resource assets there. So 21.3 million up from 21 million in the prior year. That's some additions, some disposals in the year, as well as your amortization expense driving that change. So a total accumulated surplus position for financial statements, 26.9 million, very comparable year over year with 26.3 million in 2019. Just on to the statement of operations or the income statement. So total revenues actually for the year, 10.5 million, down slightly from 10.8 million, but certainly there's some notable swings within the line items above or the different financial statement captions we refer to them as, significantly being the authority generated revenues, just given the timing throughout 2020 of, when operations were either temporarily closed or scaled back. So you'll see that decline there, 1.4 million down from 2.1 million. But overall, total revenues for the year still fairly comparable at 10.5 million. With respect to your expenses, this is public sector accounting standard presentation in financial statements, just to remind you that the expenses are disclosed in the notes to the statements as well. So I'll highlight those in a moment. But these expenses are grouped by your function or your kind of key areas of departments and organization structures. So total expenses for the year, 9.9 million, down from 12 million in 2019. The most notable change, though, would have been that large levy repayment in 2019 that was agreed upon, and that's what's driving most of the decline in your expenses. So for the year ended December 31, 2020, you have a small or a reasonable surplus of 596,000, and again, a total accumulated surplus balance of 26.9. On this statement here, I make the same joke every year probably, but it really is an accountant statement just in terms of reconciling the movement in your net financial assets, that indicator I mentioned on the balance sheet, but it takes your surplus or deficit and takes the movement in your infrastructure, investments, and tangible capital assets to arrive at that net financial asset position, but nothing too concerning on this statement. Last statement is the statement of changes in cash flows. So, certainly easy to read this by its subtotals. So for the year ended December 31, 2020, you generated 2.2 million in cash just from the day-to-day operations of running the authority. So that's just, opening the doors, providing services to the residents of Niagara, 2.2 million in operation cash received and recognized in the year. That, of course, is drawn down by any investments you continue to make in your resources and your infrastructure and your assets. So that's a net decline on your cash or decrease in your cash of 1.3 million. And then you also had some small, changes in your investments that are held at the end of the year just for your GICs as they continue to renew and reinvest. And then also on your financing activities, you had a draw on cash of 216,000. Of course, that's the repayment of the long-term debt that has been in existence for some time with the region and is now fully paid off as of December 31, 2020, for a total overall increase in cash year over year of 625,000. And the remainder of the financial statements, as I mentioned in the audit findings report, your significant accounting policies have all been appropriately applied under public sector accounting standards and consistently applied. There's been no new notes to the financial statements, so no additional note disclosures, no changes in the note disclosures. Of course, as I mentioned, the notes provide a bit more information and granularity in terms of what's on the face of the financial statements. I'm just checking to make sure I don't miss anything in terms of the notes that are important to highlight to you. And then, of course, as mentioned, the segmented information required disclosure. So there's your breakdown and your components of your expenses by more traditional means, like salaries, purchase services, and interest, and so forth. So happy to take any questions if there are any on the statements as well. I think that covers it.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Are there any questions? If you don't mind, can we use the chat? Unless those that are phoning in can just shout out. Oh, thank you very much, Scott. Are there any questions so far? Member Kewell.
Sorry, Chair. Just one item that we discussed at the Finance Committee that I thought we should raise here. So on the statement of operations, okay, if you will recall that Mr. Plugers talked about on the expense side, there are only 3 categories of expenses right now. The board has been asking management to become more transparent with reporting of expenses. That means that in going forward, we're looking to see a further breakdown or more line items on the expense side. So the question was put to the auditor, what are the auditor's views with respect to management making those changes on future year's statement?
So Scott, I believe.
No, for sure. I mean, from our standpoint, there's no real concern other than first and foremost, that the statement upholds the accounting standards in place. So public sector accounting standards require you to present your income statement by function, as I mentioned. So that's historically been the kind of high-level functions or top-level presentation of the financial statements of the authority over time. There's nothing precluding or stopping management from having that break down into more functional departments or functional areas. I think you want to balance that with the needs of the board and the users of the financial statements and the relevance of that information. So what I mean by that is if you put down 15 different functions, is that really realistic, or are you just trying to get more information on the face of the statements? I think because public sector accounting standards would say you present your statements by function, as I mentioned, it's reasonable to have several functions. If you look at a municipal statement or other entities that present it this way, I think ultimately the decision that's made by management and the board, will be supported by us so long as it upholds the standards and it provides meaningful and useful and relevant information. From our standpoint, it's no concern overall.
Okay, thank you, Member Kewell.
Yes, thank you. So the one other item that was discussed that I thought would be relevant to just ask Scott to comment on again was respect to 2 of the notes. Note number 4 on deferred revenues and note number 10 on contingencies. So note number 4 on deferred revenues identifies revenues that we have received but really have not taken into income yet. From my perspective, it's a timing issue. One of those items is in dispute, which is the Canada Employment Wage Subsidy. And the question was asked for the readers, would it be more transparent to actually identify that as a potential contingency, or do we just leave it in the deferred revenue note?
Scott?
So Mr. Plugers, if you could address what you did at the committee again, that would be appreciated.
No, absolutely. And, Member Kewell, there's even discussions ongoing to, as of yesterday in terms of what presentation looks like in the statements for entities similar to the authority where, you're in the midst of objections and filing responses and dealing with the SUS, legislation as a whole. I mean, first and foremost, the view I kind of take on it is that you've got it presented not in revenue, because as at December 31st, you haven't proven that you've met the eligibility criteria yet as at December 31st, 2020. So first and foremost, it's a liability on your balance sheet, and where it shows up in terms of the presentation of deferred revenue versus elsewhere, is up for great debate amongst the auditors. It's the most exciting thing to happen next years, it seems. But again, first and foremost, you've got it as a liability. That's step one. Step two is the amount of information or how much relevance and usefulness you want to provide to a user. There's nothing precluding management from saying in the notes to the financial statements why you haven't met the eligibility criteria yet and what the steps are that you're undertaking to meet the eligibility criteria, or some of the uncertainties around it. I don't, as at December 31st, 2020, it's not necessarily a contingency yet. And I think that was some of the debate on, is it really a contingency? Are you going to be repaying it back? Are you going to be successful in your objection and your claim? And what level of information does a user need to see in the financial statement? So, there was certainly good discussions around that, around what needs to go in the statements, what's important, but, and if there's still amendments that come from the request of the board today, it's still within your right to make those changes if you feel there's additional disclosures needed. But certainly from a financial statement standpoint, you've met your disclosure requirements within the, the rules and realm of materiality as well.
Thank you. Member Kaywell?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So those were the discussion items for the Finance Committee. There were no changes that were requested by the Finance Committee, so I thought it was important that at least those got replayed for the entire board. Thank you.
Thank you. And I had, I believe Member Fiore was waving her hand frantically at the very beginning, and then I see a question from Member Smith in the chat. So we'll go to Member Fiore, and then we'll go to Member Smith if Member Smith wants to also pull up the page number you're referring to. Thank you. So Member Fiore, you're first.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Not waving frantically, but yeah, my hand up just to speak to something that Member Kaywell had mentioned for the statement of operations under expenses. I don't know if it is possible. It sounds like this could be expanded, that the expenses maybe include an additional line item for land operations being the other big department. Maybe that could help. And then if it is possible and necessary, potentially an additional note disclosure that breaks it down a little bit further so it's not as cluttered on the statement of operations, but it gives the opportunity for increased transparency.
Thank you. Scott, any response?
Yeah, I think that's a fair comment for sure. I think just to preface, what I was mentioning before was I think you never want to see 15 functions or 50, so many departments, because does that really make sense? But absolutely a function or an area like land operations would have a notable impact in the authority's operations in the year. So that's not unreasonable. And in terms of disclosure, you can add disclosure to the financial statement. So the requirement of any entity is to have the minimum disclosure requirements under the accounting standards. If you want to add additional disclosures, like that will provide more information, certainly that can be done, and you have the ability to do that. Again, it comes back to those common terms, like as long as you're not, as long as the disclosure is relevant, not misleading, it's appropriate, you can put in extra notes as you need to describe what happened in the year for user, for sure. So that note could be expanded on. And again, on the segmented information is also probably where you could look to tweak that note a little bit too, to make that a little easier to read. There's certain other options with that.
Thank you. And my apologies about that, folks. I just shut my phone off. I didn't realize it was on. Member Fiore, you still have the floor. Do you have any other questions or comments?
No, thank you for that, but hoping that maybe it can be explored to add land operations. I just took a quick look at the the organizational chart, and it looks like that's the other kind of big division. I think communications would maybe be too small to have its own line item, but land operations could be significant enough. And then exploring if a note disclosure would be something worth adding in future statements.
Okay, so, thank you. And Scott, that's great. Thank you. Member Smith?
Sorry, can I just respond? So I just want to give management full credit here that they were already proactively working on this. So they have already started to think about what those further breakdowns would be, and that'll be coming forward through the normal process. So thank you for your input, Member Fiore. But I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that management was already working on a further breakdown. So
thank you. Member Smith, you're on. You have the floor.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Johnson. Mr. Pluger, in your presentation, you had made mention, and I don't have the presentation up, so I can't refer to it directly, but you had made mention about 2019 and 2020. It was about revenues, and there was a $500,000 or $600,000 increase from 2019 to 2020 in, I think it was revenues. And my question was, because I would have expected kind of the opposite with 2020 having been a COVID year. How did we increase revenues in 2020?
Mr. Plugers?
I always get burned by my double mute option here, so sorry about that.
My husband would like one of those.
It's definitely handy, but I always forget that I hit the mute button there. So sorry. So maybe if I might have misspoke. So revenues actually did decline, but what I was getting at was there was some movement within your line items. What I find is important when I present these statements or any statements is you look at the total, but the total only tells you part of the story. You have a lot going on up here in terms of your various, we'll call them buckets, sources of revenue. And so you have a notable decline of 650,000. I can't do the math quickly in my head, which is bad, but the user fees, sales, and admissions, right? So the authority generated revenues, which absolutely, to your point, we expected to decline. We saw a decline. It made sense, given the shuttering of operations for a number of months. And as well as, you think of some of the impacts around, we think of wedding season in Balls Falls and some of the deposits you received that would have been recognized in the year that were not recognized if they were deferred or delayed or postponed. So that decline is absolutely, to your point, valid. There's a few small areas where you'd have some slight increases, which can happen from time to time with other sources of revenue, but overall there is a decline in revenue. You'll see within the special levy here, as part of that is really offsetting why you're not seeing a larger decline in revenue than you might have first expected, just because you're seeing some increase there in the approved special levies in 2020.
Thank you.
Member Smith?
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Scott before we? Okay, Scott, and are you wrapping up? This is finished.
I think I'm okay from my end. If there's other questions, happy to take them for sure.
Thank you, and our congratulations to our staff as well, Lise and the gang. Thank you so much. Scott said that at the very beginning of his presentation, how receptive you were, and your staff were just wonderful in providing all the information he needed. So at this time, folks, we need to receive Scott's presentation. Then we're going to lift the item 9.1.3 to approve it all at one. So it's been moved by Member Cridlin, second by Member Fior to receive Scott's presentation. We'll do that first, please. Any opposed? Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you very much, Scott. Now we're going on to lifting the item 9.1.3. This is the 2020 audited financial statements and audit findings report. So to lift it, I'm going to ask Member Foster, Member Angreo, if we can lift that item out of the agenda, put it forward. Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. And then it's moved by Chair Kaywall of the Finance Committee and seconded by our Vice Chair of the Mpca, McKenzie, that we approve the financial statements and audit findings. Any questions, any concerns, any opposed? Seeing none, thank you very much, folks. It has been carried. Scott, have a wonderful day, and I hope you get to see some of the sunshine.
Definitely going to try at some point today, but thank you, everyone. And certainly appreciate the change in your agenda. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, folks. We're going to now move on to correspondence. We're at 4A. This is Conservation Ontario Council report dated March 29, 2021. This is the proposed Conservation Ontario Governance, Accountability and Transparency Initiative and endorsement of steering committee representatives. When we sent out the agenda, we didn't realize that they were actually asking a motion come from this board to support. So I'm going to turn it over to Grant, if you don't mind, please putting the motion forward. So instead of just receiving this correspondence, we're going to receive and also move a motion to support. I just want everybody to see the motion up front. I know it was emailed to you earlier today, but just to be so that the public can read it. So whereas the provincial government has passed legislative amendments related to the governance of conservation authorities. And whereas the conservation authorities remain committed to fulfilling accountable and transparent governance. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority endorse the 3 key actions developed by the Conservation Ontario Steering Committee to update Conservation Authority's administrative bylaws to report proactively, sorry, this is really tiny, on priorities and to promote or demonstrate results. And that staff be directed to work with the Conservation Ontario, you're going to have to move that out of the way, Grant, thank you, to implement these actions and to identify additional improvements and best management practices. So right now I have member Mpca, seconded by member Rapley. We can remove the share. Thank you very much, Grant. Are there any comments, any concerns, or any opposition? No, seeing none, thank you. So that's to receive and to approve the motion. Thank you. So now we're on to 4B. This is correspondence dated April 23rd, 2021 from the town of Pelham, and this is regarding motions and notice of motions regarding the request for erosion mitigation, headwaters of the 12-mile creek. This is to receive, but I have in my chat that member Mackenzie, Vice Chair Mackenzie, had a question regarding this.
Chair Johnson, I believe my question was to do with item D.
Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies. So it is to receive, and so it's been moved by member Mpca, seconded by member Rapley. Any opposed? Seeing none, thank you. So we're moving on to 4B. Oh, sorry, for 4C. My apologies. I've got to move, I got to scroll here. This is correspondence dated April 27th, 2021 from the town of Fort Erie to the Honorable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario. This is regarding province investigation and updating source water protection legislation, and this is to receive. I have it moved by member Smith, seconded by member Steele. Any oppositions, concerns, or questions? Member Fior, you're not waving frantically. I just want that for the record.
I was actually reaching for a snap earlier, yeah. So sorry, to this one here, I do see that the very last that in this item says that this resolution be circulated to all conservation authorities and municipalities in Ontario for their endorsement and support. So I recognize that we are receiving it today. Is there anything that we can do to further support this?
I will turn it over to CAO Sharma for a comment, please.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, thank you for that question. Just want to update the board members that if you receive it, you have already authorized staff to continue to work on it. Conservation Ontario has a joint advisory committee represented by 4 CAOs, including myself. This committee is called the JAC, Joint Advisory Committee, and it works with the province on these type of matters. As of today, I have confirmed with Conservation Ontario staff that this item has been placed on the agenda for that committee to have a discussion with any ministry staff. So just an update for you.
Thank you, Member Fior.
Okay, thank you. Through you to CAO Sharma. So is it, have you communicated this then with the town of Fort Erie that that these are the next steps that are going to be taken as an indication of support, or is that not customary?
No, we can. It has just been, sorry, through you, Chair Johnson, it has just been confirmed, so we will be formally sending some correspondence to the town.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Smith, waving frantically.
As I tend to do.
Yes.
Thank you. I'm wondering because I understand the gist, or if I understand the gist of what Member Fior is speaking about. I think it would be very important for us to, I'm going to use the term jump on this bandwagon. Fort Erie is showing some leadership here on what is an important issue. And I appreciate I appreciate the CAO's words too, that it's now being tabled at the Conservation Authority's or Conservation Ontario's JAC. But it certainly could only help if we as a conservation authority endorsed this and said, way to go, Fort Erie. I know that smarter people than me will put better words to it than that, but we should be saying, way to go, Fort Erie, somehow.
Okay, so I'm going to go to CAO Sharma and ask, I don't see anything negative in endorsing this correspondence. You're shaking your head, that's not a problem then? Okay, super. So how about we move it, Member Fiore, you brought it up first and seconded by Member Smith, that we endorse 4C, which is the letter from Fort Erie, the watershed. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you very much. So now we're moving on to 4D. Let me pull that up. Okay, so 4D, this is correspondence dated April the 30th, 2021 from Jim Bradley, Chair of the Niagara Region, to the Honorable Omar, I'm sorry, I will not get this right. So the Minister of Transport, Transport Canada, surplus lands in Niagara-on-the-Lake, Ontario. So folks, there's a change of the agenda in this. I would like to ask that we endorse this. I had an opportunity to talk to Chair Bradley. We had a long conversation about this, and he also feels that if the NPCA helps to endorse the Niagara region to potentially purchase the lands or lease those lands for trails and parks, it's not definite yet, but he wants to put that out there to Minister of Transportation so that they have their foot in the door. So I would like to get it. Oh, Member Steele, thank you.
Thank you. And same as the last item, all we need to do is say that we're going to, although we're going to receive it, we're also going to support this. You don't need to have too many words in there, but that's normally what we would do at council to move this forward to show support. So, and I agree with this. Yep. And it's
Thank you.
And it's Omar Alhabra. He's the Minister of Transport. So.
Well, sir, I will go to you all the time. I come by this honestly. I really do. And I'm sorry. And I don't want to insult anybody by mispronouncing their names, as I've done earlier. Member Metcalf, would you have the same ilk because your hand was up? Thank you. So just to put a caveat on this, Chair Bradley was asking that we send a letter to all those involved to our support. So it will be moved by Member Steele, second by Member Metcalf. That we send those letters off for endorsement. Member Woodhouse, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering, in the mandate of the region, is this does this fall within their legislative mandate? Because what's I guess my concern would, and I'm not concerned about the initiative. I think it's the right thing to do, and I think any of us that can. When I say us, I mean municipalities or other like agencies come in and support this. I think it's a good thing. I just don't know what the intent of the region is in terms of these properties and these trails. Are they going to be turning them over to the municipalities? Are they going to be, if there's environmentally sensitive areas in terms of the watershed, is this something that they would be turning over to us for ownership? And maintenance, and therefore the costs associated with it, I'm not certain.
If I can intercede here, and Member Mackenzie just went off, so I didn't know if I could turn the chair over to answer your question, but my conversations with Mr. Bradley, Regional Chair Bradley, and reading his letter, he sees this as a combination of everything, that it would be turned over to municipalities and there could be some ownership for the Mpca at that time. I think that legislative wise, I think that's up to the region to decide whether or not they're within their legislative rights to do this. But as the Mpca, we're just offering our support to get any kind of lands into the public space. Member Woodhouse?
I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think that's helpful information. I just want to make sure that if we're in unification, if we're all supporting this, I think it's a great thing. But at some point, if the lands are to be turned over to us, obviously there's costs associated with the management of those lands and those watersheds. So I would hope that the region and Chair Bradley would be supportive of, increasing our funding to recognize those things. Simply turning over land ownership doesn't help us with our operating budget. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, concerns? It's been moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Metcalf, that we have direct the staff to go to the Minister of Transportation in the federal government for endorsement. Vice Chair McKenzie, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and I'd like to thank fellow members for their comments on this subject. Member Clark and I at the Niagara Escarpment Commission meeting yesterday had long discussions about the need for more public spaces to provide the public with greater opportunities of getting out into nature. And this piece of property being located near rather large population centers could fill that need very, very well. So I'm so pleased that the Conservation Authority will choose to endorse this, and with Wood End Conservation Area being adjacent to it, and with the possibilities of memorandums of understanding between different public landowners, the NPCA may have a vital role in managing or in providing input as to how this land could be best used. I look forward to seeing the progress as time moves along. Thank you, Chair Johnson.
Thank you for your comments, Member McKenzie. Member Steele.
Thank you, Chair. And I just want to confirm that with regards to the two letters, that we include everybody that Chair Bradley has included here. And I think it's very important that we may want to send something from our chair and CAO combined to the 4 MPs, because with dealing with Transport Canada, for those that may not know, so it's surplus land that's in the St. Lawrence Seaway Authority's bailiwick. It then goes to Transport Canada, but then Canada Lands gets a hold of it and sells it. Don't want to get into Canada Lands. We want to acquire this before it goes to Canada Lands, and that we would hope that the MPs, specifically Vance and Chris Biddle, can go after Transport Canada to get it through that route, because A, you can get it for maybe nothing, or B, for not as much as what Canada Lands, because Canada Lands is there to make money for the government, but you're hoping that, and this is done all the time, you're hoping that you can get it out of there. So I would ask that within this, we also include in both letters all the people that that the chairs included, but that we specifically write to the 4 MPs for Niagara with regards to trying to get this through Transport Canada before it gets into Canada Land's hands. I think it should be a separate letter, if we could do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that I will take that as direction. I don't think we need a separate motion for that. So Chandra is writing fast and furious over there, so we're going to make sure that gets working. So again, it's been moved by Member Steele, seconded by Member Metcalf. Member Woodhouse. Member Woodhouse?
Yes, thank you. I just had to unmute here because the chairman says we have to do that very much, so it takes me a little bit to navigate it. But I agree with that. I support Member Steele's comments. I think that we should add on there that we would encourage them to actively pursue on our behalf this transition. I think that might be helpful too, because just sending it to them saying that, this is where our position is, et cetera, but I think encouraging them to actively pursue this would be helpful. The reason I say that is because I remember the debate, Madam Chair, about the Welland Canal bypass that went through Welland, and the long discussions that took place when the ownership was transferred to the city of Welland, and the funding that took to maintain it. So, there could be some of these opportunities for us as well through that transfer, that, there could be some legacy funding that might be included as part of that. So I just offer that as a suggestion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So again, I'm going to ask, is anyone opposed? Seeing none, thank you very much. It's carried. So now we're on to presentations. We've already dealt with the KPMG presentation, so we're moving right on to 5B. This is a presentation that our CAO is going to give us. This is regarding the Bill 229. And at the end of the presentation, we are going to move a motion to direct staff to send the comments as soon as possible. If we wait till next meeting to bring the comments back, it's very time sensitive. So just wanted to put that context in place right now so that you understand when Chandra is explaining everything. Thank you. So Chandra, the floor is yours. Can everybody else please mute themselves, as Member Woodhouse says? Not you, Chandra. You can unmute yourself.
Thank
It's
you.
the fear of God I'm putting into everybody today. Thank you.
Do I have this? Yes, I do. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, can everybody see the presentation here? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair Johnson. Can everybody hear me and see the presentation? Please, somebody give me a thumbs up. Okay, great, thanks. Excellent. So the purpose of my update today is to provide our board a brief overview of the CA Act, Conservation Authority Act regulatory proposal that was posted on the Environmental Registry for public comments, and the next steps that NPCA staff are taking in coordination with Conservation Ontario and our neighboring conservation authorities. Bill 229, as you know, I'm just giving you a little bit of context so everybody is with me on this. It has been a long process, so it's important to understand where we are in the process. So as you know, Bill 229 received royal assent on December 8th, 2020. And at that time, there were several unproclaimed provisions in the Conservation Authority Act, and they were stemming from previous changes to the Act or changes made in 2017, 2019, and 2020. So the province is taking a phased approach to this, and as such, Phase 1 Regulations Guide was released last Thursday. Some of the governance provisions proclaimed in February, and NPCA staff have already acted on them and continue to work on them to make sure we are in conformity by the next term of our board. Earlier this year, the province also established a working group of stakeholders to provide guidance in developing these proposed regulations. The working group consists of representatives from conservation authorities, Conservation Ontario, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, as well as the development and agriculture sector. So the purpose of this guide that is posted for 45 days and the comments are due June 27th. The purpose really is to provide information on upcoming regulations for public comments. Now, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that Section 28 regulations regarding planning and permitting are not included in this guide at this time. And it is my understanding that the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry will be releasing those in the coming weeks. So Phase 1 regulations, there's 4 focus areas. First one is about our mandatory programs as prescribed in the Act. Then the second area of regulations is municipal agreements, and it's combined with transition provisions regarding both mandatory and non-mandatory programs. And then there's also regulations around community advisory boards on governance and transparency. And then there are some other regulations related to Section 29, which pertains to Conservation Authority lands and activities allowed and how we work, to manage those lands. So let me just highlight a few important aspects of the proposed regulation in the coming slides. And I want to specifically talk about these 4 areas that are highlighted in this slide. So the most important thing for me, and it was very encouraging to see that conservation authorities will be required to develop a list of programs and services under the umbrella of a watershed-based resource management strategy. And recognition of a water-based resource management strategy or work is a win for conservation authorities. It aligns well with the purpose of conservation authority and fundamental to the nature of the programs and services that transcend municipal boundaries. Details are still need to be worked out, and we'll be working with our Conservation Ontario colleagues to define this broader framework. But this aligns well with our proposed approach to developing our budgets and business plans in future. I was already planning to do that. And as I indicated, this slide provides an opportunity for a lot of positive outcomes, including educating the public and the stakeholders and partners on the value of the work we do. And it also helps us with consistency among all conservation authorities. The other one is Section 29 regulations. So the regulations itself hasn't changed much, but what's happening here is the consolidation of all Section 29 regulations. Right now, at this point, every conservation authority has their own Section 29 regulation. So what the province is trying to do is consolidating all of that into one Section 29 regulations on for activities on conservation authority lands. So the flexibility around transition period is helpful, as we now have until the end of 2022 to complete the transition of our programs, agreements with municipal partners, and budgets in advance of 2023 budget cycle. And to go back to Member Fiore's point this morning, there's various things happening at TRCA. Our strategic plan is coming to completion. We have this Bill 229 and regulations to work on, mandatory, non-mandatory program. So how we design our budgets and our programs in functional categories will be influenced by all of this information. And that's the work. It's a lot of work for NPCA staff to complete this year and next year. And our management team and staff will be starting to work on these things. We do have to present a transition plan and submit to the province by the end of 2021. And this simply will say how we are going to transition to bring our work in conformity with the proposed regulations. Ministry is also asking for quarterly reports for transparency, to tell them how we are progressing on these transition activities. Finally, the community advisory boards are now mandatory. This regulation basically will enable other conservation authority. For NPCA, it's not going to be a huge thing. We may need to just look at the terms of reference. It is already part of our bylaw as of the last update, or we may need to update the terms of reference based on the new regulations. But mostly for other conservation authorities now, the advisory boards are mandatory, and the board of the conservation authority will determine what the terms of reference for those will be. So in terms of what we are doing right now, in terms of current actions, staff will attend the MECP information sessions. We are going to be bringing our comments to the June meeting. And thank you, Chair Johnson, for giving us some latitude here to develop our comments and share with our municipal partners. That's what I was going to do. because it's important for our municipal partners to send letters of endorsement because the province will be looking forward to that. And we want to do it in time so our municipalities can see our comments and they have an opportunity to use those or develop their own comments based on what we say and submit to the province. The deadline is the 27th. We would like to send our comments to our municipal partners, but we can still submit it to the province after the June 18th board meeting. But I really appreciate the chair allowing us to work on these timelines with some flexibility. We also will be providing our comments to Conservation Ontario and wait for the regulations to come out to start our work. We'll probably start earlier than that. Finally, in terms of some of the next step, staff and I will be working on the transition plan to be submitted by the province on December 2021. We will be also starting as soon as the strategic plan is completed, an inventory of services and programs based on that watershed-based resource management strategy, and implementing our quarterly reporting to the province, working with our municipal partners once everything is said and done for throughout next year to bring our programs and budget in alignment and work towards the 2023 budget based on the new regulations. This is my brief update, and I can take any questions from the board as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you remove the sharing, please? That way I can see everybody better. Thank you. And thank you, Chandra, for piecing that together for us. Are there any questions right now for Chandra before we move on to the motion? Thank you, Member Vice Chair. Member Vice Chair, sorry. You're muted again, sir. Lori's playing with them. Playing with that mute button.
Yeah. Through you to CEO Sharma. Will these quarterly reports, if this goes ahead, do you anticipate that this is something that would continue on into the future? The reason I say that, when I look at 36 conservation authorities with quarterly reports, tremendous amount of repetition could be involved and non-productive work, because I know how much it takes from staff to put these reports together. So that's my question.
CEO Sharma?
Through you, Chair Johnson, thank you, Member McKenzie, for that question. At this point, the guide includes this in regards especially to the transition provisions. So it's a requirement until we have fully transitioned into this new regulation to provide quarterly reports. It's not clear, or it's not known at this point whether we are going to be reporting in some way, shape, or manner to the province on going forward. However, I must also say that every time we have funding from the province, whether it's source protection program or Section 39 funding for flood and erosion control, all of those reports are regular and they're pretty extensive. So when we discussed with Conservation Ontario, we talked about this, and this will be further discussed with the province.
Thank you. Vice Chair?
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Member Halenga, I saw your hand up. And is it Member Cridlin as well? Just shake your head yes. Okay, thank you. Member Halenga, you're next. Did I lose it?
Does this mean that all these reports and updates that we are going to require some additional staff, or is our available staff complement large enough to do all of the things that all the reports and our objectives are met.
Thank you. CAO?
It
You're
is a
muted.
common
There you go.
concern. Yeah, thank you, Chair Johnson. It is a common concern that this is a lot of work, not just reporting. We're talking about taking us from here to the end of 2022 to complete all of this work. I do think we may need some additional resources or staff support because our plates are full and we have lots going on at the NPCA right now. I haven't figured that out fully, but yes, we will need some supports.
Thank you, Member Halenga. Member Halenga? See, he's on. He's muted. You're muted yourself, I think, sir. There you go. Member Halenga? No. Okay, so we're going to go to Member Cridlin and Member Halenga.
Yes.
If you still have questions. Oh, there you are. Good. Do you have any further questions or comments, sir? You're
No.
muted
No,
again.
that's good.
there-
Thank you.
Thank you. Member Cridlin, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you through you, Chair Johnson, to our CAO. Looking past, it looks like obviously we've got some very urgent deadlines that you're working on. Thank you very much for this presentation. As we get a little bit past some of the deadlines, you talked about the first section that there's quite a few wins in there for probably our watershed is, based. So as we move into what the municipal partnerships could be, is it more that we're going to try to, as quickly as possible, set our baseline, but that there's actually going to be some time for municipalities to be thinking maybe between now and, the end of January 2022 to be actually increasing the value or increasing the relationship with the NPCA. So I'm not sure what those things would be yet, because of course there's more that could be done if the levies, of course, were supporting them and the MOUs. But is that a phase that we're going to look forward to, once this urgent work is set up and then going forward? Thank you.
Thank you. CAO?
To you, Chair Johnson, I think it will be a phased approach, I can tell you, and it will be a very collaborative approach. And it won't be just the upper tier municipalities, it will be the lower tier municipalities as well. Because whatever we do, we have to set the stage now and go talk to them. Although the regulation dictates the SLA, service level agreements, and MOUs with upper tier or funding municipalities, as members are aware, we also have service level agreements with lower tier municipalities on the planning side. And there will be discussions with everyone to see what we can offer or not, because now we have to organize our programs based on the categories that the province has given us. And just to remind everyone, the purpose of the Conservation Authority is still the same, that natural resource management focus, but in the Act, there are 3 categories of programs. The first category is that mandated program. The second category is the non-mandated programs that municipalities will be willing for us to do for them. These are services, and will still be funded by levy. And then there is a third category of programs that are board directed. And these are the programs and services that fall within the broader mandate of Conservation Authority, very specific to each Conservation Authority and their board wants them to do. And these are the programs where you might work with your upper tier, lower tier, or another partner to carry out that program. So this is what we are dealing with right now. So there's a lot of work that is going to go into this. And I can assure you that I will be setting up meetings with our municipal partners going forward, because for us to do this and go to them like we've done this and now you have to just accept this is not the approach we want to take. We want to work with them, and also they need to really understand the details in the resource management strategy. So I think we're all on the same page.
Thank you. Member Cridlin?
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you. So if there are no other questions or comments, folks, I'd really like to get a motion or direction to staff to send off their comments as soon as possible to not only the municipalities for their endorsement, because this is very time sensitive. We can't wait until the next board meeting. So I have moved by Member Woodhouse, second by Member Wright. Staff be directed to send their comments as soon as possible to all participating municipalities for their support. Any opposition, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, thank you very much. It's carried. So now we're moving on, folks. We're finished with presentations. There are no delegations today, so we're going to consent items. 7A is report number FA2021 regarding the 2020 year-end status report for the Mpca Ontario Power Generation Welland River Watershed Account Memorandum of Understanding. This is just to receive. Are there any questions or concerns? I've got it moved by Member Halenga, seconded by Member Beattie, that we received this report. Seeing none, no opposition. It's carried. Thank you. We're moving on to 7B. This is report FA35-2021. This is the Hamilton Binbrook Conservation Area Capital Funding Plan to receive. It is moved by Member Brady, seconded by Member Clark. Any questions, comments, opposition? Seeing none. Thank you very much. So now we're on to discussion items. Report number this is 8A, report number FA28-2021, Compliance and Enforcement Officer Appointment. We need to approve this. So it is moved by Member Clark. And Member Coon-Peterson, are you still on? I see the telephone lit up, but I didn't see, and I know you've muted yourself, so if you don't mind just letting a shout out so I can put you in as a seconder. If not, I'll move on to another person. Not seeing any, so it's moved by Member Clark, seconded by Member Cridlin. Any comments or questions about the enforcement officer appointment? Any opposition? Thank you. It's approved. So we're on to 8B. This is report number FA34-2021, Natural Resources Canada 2 billion tree request for information. This is to approve, and I have it written down as Member Fiore, seconded by Member Foster. Are there any questions, concerns? Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. And Member Coon-Peterson just texted me that she's still here, but we'll move on anyway. Thank you, Member Coon-Peterson. So now we're on to committee reports. Finance Committee. So first I'd like to get, sorry.
Madam Chair, can I take a minute to thank the board members for helping us on this 2 billion tree program?
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I just want to take a minute to thank the board members. This is a very timely opportunity, and I'm really inspired and motivated that we, together with our municipal partners, will be able to attract this federal investment. There is still a lot of work to be done on this, but we've had a very good start. Thank you, Member Steele, to allowing your CAO, Scott Louis, to coordinate regional CAOs. We had a meeting on April 23rd. Every CAO attended. One or two sent their delegates, and we have a lot of support. And I'm really encouraged to see this collaboration and coordination here in Niagara. Also, through you, Chair Johnson, my thank you to you for facilitating that coordination with Hamilton, City Manager, and also through Member Shurton with Haldeman. And this is a great opportunity unfolding, and we have a lot of support, and we just keep our fingers crossed that we can make it happen and set up a 10-year program to address a whole bunch of issues related to our natural heritage, ecology, climate change, and engaging people in this very timely initiative. So just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you. Alrighty, so we've already approved that. Thank you, CAO Sharma. And we're now on to discussion items, and we're going to the minutes first of the Finance Committee, dated April 28, 2021. This is just to receive, folks. So we're on to Member Angreo. Let's do Chair Kwal, seconded by Member Angreo. Any opposition, comments, or concerns? Seeing none. That's approved. We move on to 9.1.2. This is report number FA 3021. This is regarding the 2021 operating and capital budgets final. This is for the final approval. So we're going to, and if you don't mind, I'm going to get Member Kwal to be the mover of all these since he's the chair. So it's Member Kwal, seconded by Member Mackenzie, that we approve it. Any concerns or questions or opposition? And Member Mackenzie just popped out, so we're going to make it Member Metcalf. Sorry, Member Metcalf, you're sitting there all. Any opposition? Member Kwal, go ahead. You are unmuted.
So, sorry,
There you
Chair. Not in opposition, but just to provide the board with a couple of items that were discussed at the committee. One of them was with respect to the reserves policy. You may recall at the end of last year, we approved a reserves policy that had some new categories of reserves. And so the question was to management, when do you plan to realign the list of those new categories? Sorry, the question was, do you plan to realign the list of reserve categories? And if so, when? Maybe I could just ask Director Gagnon to just comment on that, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Director Gagnon.
Good morning, Chair Johnson, and through you, Chair Johnson, to Chair Kwal. Yes, we are currently in the process of realigning those categories in line with the new reserves policy that was approved in December. There's been some consultation with KPMG through our audit as well, so to make sure that our realignment is appropriate from an accounting standpoint and meets those standards. So there will be something coming through to Finance Committee and the board likely at the end of Q2.
Thank you, Member Kwal.
And then the second question that was asked, the recommendation here is to approve the drawdown or use of a portion of our reserve funds. And the question was, how do we replenish our reserve funds, because they're now starting to get low? And again, I would ask Director Gagnon to respond to that question.
Okay, thank you. Director Gagnon.
Through you, Chair Johnson, we have begun the discussions with our municipal partners on replenishment of reserves as part of the 2021 budget process. I don't have any concrete decisions for you yet, other than we're working through a strategy so that we can approach our municipal partners with a proposed strategy in line with the 2022 budget cycle.
Thank you, Member Kwal.
So those were the comments from the committee to support this item.
Thank you very much for adding that context. Okay, so folks, it's been moved by Member Kwal, second by Member Metcalf to approve. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. So now we're going to move on to 9.1.3 was already approved right after KPMG's presentation. So we're moving on to 9.1.4. This is report number FA 3221. This is regarding the financial report for the Q4 2020, and it's to be approved. Moved again by the chair of the Finance Committee, Kwal, seconded by Member Rapley. Any opposition? Discussion? Concerns? Seeing none, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, Member Kwal.
No, sorry. I'll come back and speak to it after. So
after we approve it?
Yes.
So we don't have any, pitfalls here?
Well, okay, so
no,
right,
I'm just kidding you.
No, let me bring the item forward. I don't think it relates to the actual approval of this, but one of the concerns I have is with respect to the Canada Employment Wage Subsidy. Okay. So we have applied for it. The initial go-around, we We received it, okay? The Canada Revenue Agency has now come back and told us that we are not eligible to have received it. And at this point in time, management has decided that we're going to challenge the CRA eligibility, and that we have indeed hired, I think, tax or accounting assistants to help us in that challenging. So I wanted to actually make a motion that the NPCA actually accept the CRA determination and we return the Canada Employment Wage Subsidy.
Okay, I agree that that's probably not part of this motion. So let's get with this report first. And then maybe at the end of moving all the reports, we'll go to your motion at that time.
Okay,
so
thank you.
Right now we're at 9.1.4, moved by member Kaywell, seconded by member, I believe I said Rapley. Any opposition? Seeing none, we're going to 9.1.5. Report number FA 3221. This is regarding financial report Q1 for 2021. Moved again by the chair of the Finance Committee, member Kaywell, seconded by member Smith. Any opposition? Seeing none, thank you. So now we're finished with the Finance Committee, and I think member Kaywell, we're going to go to motions when we come back to you, if you don't mind. Let's get through the committee reports first, and then we'll come back to motions, okay?
Yep.
So now we're at the Public Advisory Committee, 9.2.1. This is minutes of the Public Advisory Committee meeting dated April 29th, 2021. This is to receive, and it's moved by member Steele. I still see him. And member Woodhouse, seconded by member Woodhouse. Any opposition to receiving those PAC meetings? Seeing none. Thank you. So we're going to notice this a motion. So member Kaywell, I'll come back to you. And you have a motion regarding the employment for students and the challenge. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my motion is that the NPCA accepts the Canada Revenue Agency determination and that we return the Canada Employment Wage Subsidy.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder for that, sir?
Isn't it a notice of motion, Chair?
Yes, and I still need a seconder, and then we'd have to waive the rules to move it to a motion. So right now, I'm going to go with the waiving of the motion, please, first. So I believe it would be member Kaywell would be moving it to waive the rules to move this to a motion. Do we have a seconder to waive the motion? Member Ingrao? Okay, yes, thank you. So we're waiving the rules and moving this to a motion. Any opposition to waiving the motion? The rules, I mean. Okay, I'm seeing none. I'm going back to member Kaywell, please. Member Kaywell. And I believe you read out your motion that we were not to challenge the findings.
Right. So a couple of points I'd like to make. First of all,
I want to make sure we have a seconder, sir. Do we have a seconder for this motion? Member Wright is going to second your motion. Go ahead. Thank you. Now we've got all the logistics out of the way.
Okay, so now I can speak to the motion?
Yeah, you may. Sorry, sir. I just wanted to make sure because Grant would be screaming at me on my text right now.
Great. Thank you. So the Canada Revenue Agency are really the gatekeepers of this program, and they have said we are not eligible. Okay. So this is not like a CRA determination where there may be interpretations of the legislation and could withstand a challenge. They are the gatekeepers. Secondly, we do not need the subsidy because we received the full municipal levy. We confirmed that there were no employees that we did not pay. We also confirmed that there were no employees that we fired during the year because we didn't have wages to pay for them. So we don't actually need the subsidy to pay wages. The third point was, if we did receive this money, we're not going to use it for subsidies, wage subsidies. We're going to use it for other purposes. And I think that's going to create another challenge with the CRA because these funds are to be directed for wage subsidies. The fourth point is that we are now spending money to fight the CRA. And my fifth point is that I don't think this puts us in a very positive light, trying to fight the CRA over something like this. So it's for those reasons that I'm making the motion.
Thank you. And before I go to questions, I would just like to go to comments from our staff first, please. So CAO Sharma, I'll start off with you and you can direct it to the appropriate staff. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'll try to handle this first, and Lise can jump in as needed. So just so board members know, NPCA is not the only conservation authority in this situation. There's 5 or 6 conservation authority. Together, they have received over $6 million, 6.3 to be very accurate, or something around that number. And we've also been told that it really depends on CRA evaluators. The same evaluation will be different in Ontario by one evaluator, and there'll be a different opinion by a different evaluator in some other part of the province or Canada. So I'm not here to comment on how they evaluate their application. Let's get to the bottom of what's at stake here. The largest conservation authority, Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, also has a letter of rejection. So at this point, out of the 6 or 7 conservation authorities, 3 conservation authorities have their letters. Others do not have their letters of rejection. So CRA themselves are still not sure what they're doing with conservation authority. The grounds of rejection are because they think we are municipalities. And in talking to the text lawyers and tax experts at KPMG, they think we have a pretty good case that based on how we are formed, what the Conservation Authority Act says, we control our own finances, our own surplus, our own deficits. We are not a municipality. So these are the grounds they're going ahead with. The Toronto and Region Conservation Authority is going ahead with the appeal first. And the plan is, if they win it, it sets a precedent for all other conservation authority to use that information. At this point, what we have done is only sent a letter of objection. And there was a small cost to that, stating the reasons why we think it's not the right decision. Personally, at the management level, the decision we've made to fight for this over $500,000, at the end of the day, it will be close to $600,000 if we've applied and rejected on one, so it's 550 and change. So we spent, let's say, upward of $40,000 or less to fight something that's close to the value of over 500,000. To me, it is a good business case, and if we win, we keep that money. And I guess it's how those monies are used and determines it's a different thing. And we want to do it working with the government. And we are not the only one. Municipalities are doing that. All other conservation authorities are doing that. Our sister conservation authority in Hamilton also has close to or in the same amount, $1 million of that grant. They haven't received a letter yet. So it's a different kind of, it varies across the province with various conservation authorities. Some have decided that they are going to sit on it until they receive a letter, which is a fair position. We have received a letter of rejection, so we have put a notice of objection in. Now, if the board decides we should not go, I'm okay with that decision, but I would like to request that the board provides us some more time. Let us thoroughly investigate. We're not spending any money right now. Nothing is happening. And maybe discuss it with the Finance Committee in the coming months.
Thank you very much for that. So I'm going to go back to the mover of the motion, and I heard a pretty fair request, and that was just to hold off this motion to maybe next month. It's not time sensitive at this time. It's just to get more information and come back. Are you okay with that, Member Kaywall? If we table this motion to the next meeting?
Yes, I would be. So.
Okay, that's super. So it's been tabled. Moved by Member Kaywall and again going to Member Hungreo, who was the seconder. You're okay with that with tabling? Thank you.
Member Wright.
Oh, Member Wright, my apologies. I'm ready. You should see my notes here. You just it looks like a serial killer. Trust me. It's all over the place. Sorry, Member Wright. So Member Woodhouse, it's been moved for tabling. So is there any question about the tabling? Because that's the rules right now. So go ahead, Member Woodhouse.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. My question would be to the actually dealing with a motion like this, given that there's legal matters involved in this and we have legal opinion that we're seeking, et cetera, that maybe this should be dealt with in this forum.
Thank you. So right now we're tabling it to next month, and then we can look at what form we're going to bring it forward. It may have even become a private confidential. So at this time, and I'm not suggesting it would, but it just leaves all the doors open. So thank you very much. So it has been rightfully tabled by Member Kaywall and seconded by Member Wright. And I've just had a mind blank right now. I don't know whether we vote on the tabling. So is there any opposition to the tabling? Seeing none, thank you very much. So folks, all the motions are finished. Before we go to the verbal update from Chandra, I just wanted to put out something here is that last night, both Chandra and I had the privilege and honor of attending the Rotary Club of Grimsby to witness our Vice Chair, Bruce McKenzie, receive the Paul Harris Fellow. It was wonderful to be a part of that celebration. I think we can all agree that Bruce is probably the best ambassador for conservation, restoration, and preservation for our natural heritage, and can say with absolute certainness that Bruce is a very valuable asset to this board. So Bruce, congratulations. You are the very best yesterday and tomorrow. So thank you so much for receiving that recognition. I can't think of anybody more worthy of it. So I just wanted to put that out there before we started to wrap up. And I see lots of thumbs up from everyone, sir.
Fantastic. Thank you, Chair Johnson. My screen, here people are hearing back. Thank you for all of your support.
So we're basically talking behind your back, but it was all good.
Of course, what would it have? It couldn't be different. Thank you.
So we're going to CAO Sharma for a wrap up and a verbal update before we adjourn. Go ahead, CAO Sharma. Have you got any updates for us today?
Thank you, Chair Johnson, and congratulations, Vice Chair McKenzie. Once again, it was an honor to join you last night. I have a couple of things to update the board on. The first one is the strategic plan survey. I want to thank the public for engaging with us on the strategic planning process. I want to share that over 1,500 people visited the site to learn about the initiative. Over 500 people have completed the survey, and they belong to a diverse range of sectors. It's not just community residents, so it's very diverse. The Strategic Planning Committee of the board will be getting a comprehensive update this afternoon, but I do want to thank the community, and we've got some very good suggestions, and we will be including those as we finalize the strategic plan. I want to talk briefly about our parks because this is going to be an extremely busy weekend. We are expecting a lot of people in our parks. We have carefully reviewed all the provincial guidelines and prepared accordingly. All updates are posted on our website. Conservation areas are open for passive day use recreation with family, household, and day use areas and trails only. Campgrounds, Chippewa Creek and Long Beach are open as of Friday, May 21st for seasonal camping only, no overnight camping. They are also open for passive day use recreation with family, household as day use areas. I want to also brief the members on the Waynflete Wetlands and Corey. If you remember last year, we had a lot of issue at this site or a conservation area, and we worked with the town to address those issues. This year again, proactively, NPCA has collaborated with the town of Waynflete staff and Niagara Region Police to enforce park rules for the May long weekend at Waynflete. Also wanted to inform that after the last year activities at Waynflete Quarry and the surrounding area, we had launched a comprehensive survey in the community to see what they would like to see, how we address issues. And for the past year, we've been working with the town to see what needs to be done. The survey also had a very good response. We heard a lot of good things from the public. And in line with that, we have been discussing with the town staff. NPCA will be initiating phase 1 of some of the improvements to address the health and safety issues on that property. And this will include updates to the existing parking areas so people are not parking on the street, installation of safety fencing, new site signage, added portable washrooms, garbage bins, and enforcement plates. And the mayor, I understand, of Waynflete will also be informing the council on these actions in the coming days. So I just wanted to update the board on that, and thank you for listening, and thank you for a good meeting.
Thank you, everybody. If there are no other further comments or questions, just to remind you that next month we are doing our annual, I'm sorry?
Chair Johnson, I have a quick update on the foundation under new business.
Oh, I'm sorry. Of course. I just wanted to also update everybody that next month is our annual general meeting. I believe staff have been reaching out to you. So I just wanted to put that out there. So, sorry, Member Foster, the foundation.
Yeah, the foundation of the NPCA. So, Member Cridland and I attended a meeting this week concerning the foundation. Just to let you guys all know, we're in the middle of working on plans around various capital campaigns that we're looking at. As well, we are going to be going through a recruitment process over the course of the next few months to start bringing our membership up within the foundation committee. So, and there's an awful lot of work going into that to bring in people. We're following a matrix approach with that to make sure that we have people from differing backgrounds and et cetera to help us fill in essentially some of the holes that exist within our foundation committee. So anyway, long and the short, we've had a pretty good meeting, and I just also personally, I just want to say back to Member Mackenzie, I do apologize. I was not able to attend your Paul Harris meeting last night, but you, as well as many other people within your Grimsby community, all very deserving of the awards, and congratulations on that. Thanks.
Hear, hear. So if anybody has any good candidates, by the way, for the foundation to sit on the board, I'm sure that Member Foster and Member Cridland would love to hear from you. So thank you very much, everyone. This is our last motion for the day. So I am going to take Member Kuhn-Peterson, because she is texting me. She's still here. And seconded by Member Halenga to adjourn. Any opposition to that? I didn't think so. Everybody enjoy the sunshine.
So,
Take
Chair
care.
Johnson, could I just butt in for a second? The Strategic Planning Committee is scheduled to follow. Could we maybe start that at 11:25?
I am not seeing anybody here shaking their heads no, but I think I did send my regrets. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend with you today. But I wish you all the best meetings. Yeah, thumbs up from you too, right? Member Smith, you miss sitting beside me. I know it. All right, everybody, have a great day. Take care.